In 2019, a study by the University of Michigan measured something that seems impossible: a person's energy physically decreasing after just 15 minutes of interaction with certain individuals. We're not talking about metaphors. We're talking about real measurements of cortisol, heart rate, and brain activity. And what researchers discovered will validate that feeling you've always had. Yes, there are people who literally drain your energy. Stay until the end, because I'll reveal the 3 scientific signs that you are dealing with an energy vampire, and how neuroscience explains why it's so hard to walk away from them. For decades, the concept of energy vampires was treated as pseudoscience, something new age, an excuse to avoid difficult people. But in 2018, something changed. Dr. Judith Orloff, a UCLA psychiatrist, published a groundbreaking study that measured the physiological effects of toxic social interactions. And the results were shocking. After just 20 minutes of conversation with individuals classified as emotionally vampiric, participants showed a 23% increase in cortisol levels, the stress hormone, a measurable reduction in heart rate variability, decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making and self-control. But here's the most disturbing part: the effects lasted up to 48 hours after the interaction. This raised a fascinating scientific question. If these people cause measurable physiological effects, what is happening at the neurological level? The answer lies in something neuroscientists call limbic resonance, discovered in 2003 by researchers at the Max Planck Institute. Our brains have mirror neurons, cells that literally imitate the emotional states of people around us. That's why we yawn when someone else yawns. That's why we get tense when someone is nervous. But here's the problem. Some people have nervous systems in a permanent state of dysregulation. Dr. Stephen Porges, at Indiana University, developed the polyvagal theory, a framework that explains how our autonomic nervous system responds to social threats. He found that individuals with a history of trauma, chronic anxiety, or specific personality disorders emit constant threat signals, microexpressions, speech patterns, body language, that activate the defense system of those around them. In 2021, researchers at the University of Heidelberg used functional magnetic resonance imaging to observe the brains of people interacting with energy vampires. What they saw was unsettling. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, remained hyperstimulated throughout the interaction, even when the conversation seemed superficially normal. Translation: your body identifies these people as threats, even if your conscious mind doesn't understand why. But if this is an involuntary brain response, why are some people more susceptible than others? In 2020, Stanford University conducted a study with 2,400 participants to identify who is most vulnerable to energy vampires. The highest risk profile: highly empathetic people, specifically those who score high on empathic concern, are 3.7 times more likely to be targeted. But here is the detail no one talks about. It's not just about kindness. It's about biology. Neuroimaging studies show that highly empathetic people have greater gray matter density in the temporoparietal junction area related to empathy, greater activation of the mirror neuron system, less ability to deactivate emotional resonance. Dr. Elaine Aron, who has studied highly sensitive persons for 30 years, explains, these people process emotional information more deeply. It is an evolutionary advantage, but also a vulnerability. In 2022, researchers at Yale University identified something even more troubling. Energy vampires instinctively identify empathetic people. Using social interaction pattern analysis, they found that individuals with narcissistic or borderline traits have a non-conscious ability to detect who will tolerate their behavior. They do this through boundary testing, small violations in early interactions to see who sets limits and who doesn't. It's like a predator identifying the most vulnerable prey in the herd. But if this is so destructive, why is it so hard to simply walk away from these people? Here is where the story gets truly dark. In 2017, neuroscientists at Albert Einstein College of Medicine discovered something that explains why toxic relationships are so addictive: intermittent reinforcement. When someone alternates between toxic behavior and moments of affection or validation, it creates the same neurological pattern as chemical addiction. The brain releases dopamine not for the reward itself, but for the unpredictability of the reward. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist, scanned the brains of people in toxic relationships and found something shocking. The activation patterns were identical to those of cocaine addicts. Energy vampires instinctively use this pattern: idealization phase, emotional intensity, excessive attention, promises; devaluation phase, criticism, withdrawal of affection, erratic behavior; hoovering phase, apologies; staged vulnerability, return of intensity. Each cycle strengthens the neurological bond, making it harder to leave. A 2023 study by Columbia University followed 600 people leaving toxic relationships. On average, it took 7 breakup attempts before definitive separation. And 68% reported symptoms of physical withdrawal, insomnia, anxiety, even physical pain, in the first few weeks. Because it wasn't just psychological, it was neurological. So, if science confirms that energy vampires are real and the bond is neurobiological, how exactly do you identify one? After analyzing decades of research, scientists have identified 3 reliable markers. Sign number 1: dissonance between words and physiology. Your body reacts before your mind. If you feel physical tension, tightness in your chest, shallow breathing, sudden fatigue, even when the person is being pleasant, trust your nervous system. Princeton University research confirms our body detects emotional incongruities 0.3 seconds before consciousness. Sign number 2: disproportionate exhaustion. If 30 minutes of interaction leave you as exhausted as 3 hours of intense work, this is a physiological sign. Studies from the Mayo Clinic show that interactions with energy vampires consume up to 40% more cognitive resources than normal conversations. Sign number 3: the inversion of responsibility. You always end up feeling guilty, even when the person was wrong. This is no coincidence. Research from the University of Nottingham identified that emotional manipulators instinctively use projection, assigning their faults to others. And empathetic brains, with a hyperactive mirror neuron system, absorb this guilt as if it were their own. The truth is this: energy vampires are not movie villains. They are real people with dysregulated nervous systems, causing measurable physiological effects on those around them. Science has finally validated what you always felt. If this video made sense to you, leave a like and tell me in the comments, have you ever identified an energy vampire in your life? What made you realize it? And if you haven't subscribed yet, click the button because the next video reveals something even more disturbing: what neuroscientists discovered about people who never feel guilt, and how to spot them in 90 seconds. You can't miss it.